Welcome to Conversations with Sarah. I'm Sarah Redden, therapeutic coach of SRTT, and today I'm joined by Angie Ash from Wildbare Nutrition to have a conversation about nutrition and lifestyle to combat exhaustion. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, I'm really good, thank you. Thank you for coming in and speaking with me today. So as I said, you do nutrition and lifestyle, but part of the reason for that is your own story. So would you like to share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So I've always had pretty dodgy immune system throughout. I always got ill as a child. I had cancer in my late 20s. And then I was originally diagnosed with ME in 2004. But it turned out it was cancer. So once I had various operations, all the ME symptoms disappeared, which is fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, I was lucky. And then I did a teaching career. I was in my teaching career for 10 years, and people don't lie when they say teaching is demanding. It really is demanding. Yeah. And you do work for holidays.
Yeah.
And I started getting all sorts of weird symptoms in 2012. Lots of weird symptoms, like a right arm paralysis, lots of weird pains, sudden 3-stone weight gain in 2 months, really crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'd gone from doing half marathons, cycling an hour and 20 minutes every day, to really struggling to exercise and do stuff, anything, housework, anything. By 2014, I was bedridden. I had been diagnosed with autoimmune thyroiditis, and thankfully I had a consultant who realised there was a bit more going on than just that. And so he did lots of testing, and I discovered I had actually had a weird bruise in 2012, and it turned out I'd actually been bitten by a tick and I had Lyme disease. Right. So yeah, I spent a number of years, many years, flicking in and out, being bedbound, housebound. My slightly better days were still very ill days. And I became very proficient at understanding exhaustion and trying to deal with it. And I had actually done my original nutritional diploma back in 2008, but I realised I couldn't carry on teaching, and that actually I'd spent all my life researching nutrition, that was what I needed to do, and that my experience probably could help people.
Yeah, and it makes absolute sense, doesn't it? If you've gone through those health struggles, that journey yourself, and you've got that information in your brain about nutrition, and I guess for you saw a difference when you applied that to your own healing. Why would you not pass that on? So how did you make that connection for your own healing?
Well, I think because of the results I'd got with I radically changed my nutrition when I got my cancer diagnosis, and I got really good results with that. And so I knew it could make a huge difference. And I was teaching food and nutrition anyway, and obviously it's always my area of research. So that's always my first port of call. What can I do, what can I change to get health improvements? And with any fatigue related condition, there's a lot of gut issues invariably that are going on, and gut issues are what do we put in our gut? We put food into our gut. So yeah, I think that's
and that's been my experience as well. When I was diagnosed with my fibromyalgia and my other stuff, it pretty much was like, here's your diagnosis, take these medications, off you go. And through my own exploration and luckily coming across a doctor that kind of had a little bit of understanding about vitamin deficiencies, I was diagnosed with B12 deficiency, pernicious anemia. And that's when I started to think, maybe I need to pay a little bit more attention about what I put into my body, and trying to kind of keep my vitamin nutrient levels at a better level. That has made such a difference for my well-being and my ability to function on a day-to-day basis. So when someone comes to you, a client comes to you complaining of exhaustion, where do you start?
Wow, I take a very, very thorough case history, which gives me lots of clues, but invariably You'll get a few exceptions, but invariably it will come down to gut health and sort of life load, stress, that aspect of it. The other thing that I find happens a lot is, I don't know, like circadian rhythm. So it's basically how we're living our life in relation to the daylight and nighttime.
Yeah.
And if you mess with that, which modern life is completely built to mess with that, it seems to mess a lot of other systems in the body. And yeah, so I'd say those are the 3 areas that are just core to start working on, and that are always out of whack without fail.
Yeah, and like you say, life isn't set up for those things to be nurtured and kept in balance and kept well. And I think, like for my clients as well, many of them have burnt out. We've got to the point where it's like, like, what do I do now? My own experience, burnout, absolutely. It's like, where do you go? And it's that kind of healing, isn't it? It's going through, kind of pinning back and looking at what is the stresses in life, and it's not always the things that you think it is. Would you agree?
Yeah, completely agree. And actually, if you look, so I find a lot of people will say, oh, well, this is just fine, I can cope with having 3 kids, working a full-time job, blah blah blah, all these different things. I'm fine, I'm used to it. But actually, in fact, what I find is that it causes an underlying stress. They may be used to it, and we become used to all sorts of levels of stress, but actually what that's doing to the immune system is pretty shocking. And I've found also there's a lot of issues with sort of childhood trauma, even adult trauma, that's not been fully sort of processed, and that will actually then again create a constant underlying stress, which then affects the immune system, the nervous system, or the gut, everything. So exactly
the same thing that I find with my clients. It's that it's stress affects the body on a hormonal level, and I think we don't necessarily make that connection, do we, until we start looking at it a little deeper. I had IBS for years and years and years, and now that I use like meditation and the other things that I use, I can eat foods that I believed were trigger foods before, because it wasn't necessarily the foods that were the triggers, it was the other stuff that was going on. So I think it's really fascinating, and I think like I'm at a stage now where I'm much more exploring nutrition. I think for me, when you're first diagnosed with a health condition, it's very easy to kind of dismiss nutrition as a thing, because we hear all the time, eat well, exercise, do this, do the other, but it's aimed at weight loss as opposed to health and well-being. And like you, when I had my diagnosis, I packed weight on, I was bedridden, like practically bedridden, and you kind of, for me, I was going to eat what I wanted to eat anyway, because I'm already putting weight on. So why am I going to deprive myself of the things that I want to eat if I was already like putting weight on for not eating it? I mean, my thoughts have changed around that slightly, and it very much is now about it's health. I can eat whatever I like, but health has to be the main focus of what's going in. But yeah, I think it can quite easily get dismissed. So what would you say your 3 top tips for maintaining like that good health and that energy level? What would you say?
I would say the 3 sort of tips would be, I guess these are just the basics for having a good healthy life, but they really do help with starting to build energy. Obviously you need to deal with any underlying health issues, hormonal issues, thyroid, gut, but I always have to end up doing this with clients. So it's things like, make sure you keep to a regular bedtime and wake time. So ideally around 10 to 10:30. That helps train your circadian rhythm, which is crucial for so many of the functions in the body. So yeah, I'd say that's really important. Meal times. People have crazy old meal times these days. And I guess it's due to working late, children, all of these different things. But all of the studies show that finishing your last meal of the day by 6 p.m. is the best to keep down systemic inflammation. But I know 6 p.m. is difficult because a lot of people don't even get home by that point. So I say 7 p.m. at the latest. So I give them an extra hour. But I'd say that's, again, crucial. You're not going to digest anything if you eat it any later, because your stomach acid, your enzyme production, they all decrease in line with the circadian rhythm. So as the day gets later, we have less and less stomach acid and enzyme production. And if you feel stressed or overwhelmed or overworked, or if you're fighting an infection or you've got an injury, rest. Don't work through it. You're not going to get a medal. You're not, people battling into work, fighting infection. The way our body changes how it produces energy when we're in any of those situations, stress or fighting infection, is very different to how we would do it when we're healthy. So, for example, when you're fighting an infection, we do it, we produce energy and we don't use oxygen. So we do it anaerobically, which then is great because it creates heat, which is good for a fever to fight infection. But we only get a very small amount of energy and we get a lot of lactic acid buildup. So that's why we get aches when we're ill, because it's part of that change of how we build, how we make energy. So if we're still trying to maintain a full life while our body, our immune system is completely flicked its energy production, we're completely screwing ourselves over. We're damaging many systems of our body. So that's why I always say, if in doubt, rest.
Yeah. And that goes against everything we're sort of conditioned to do society wise, because you're not at school, you need to get your 100% attendance. At work, the amount of times that when I've worked other jobs, if you phone in and say, I don't feel well, but are you sure you can't come in? Are you sure? And it's like, well, I wouldn't be phoning up if I didn't feel well. Like, we really are conditioned to ignore our body's signals and the things that it's telling us to do. And it's so simplistic, really. Like, if your body is unwell, rest it and allow it to heal is so logical, but yet we don't do it.
Exactly, yeah. And it used to be the first thing doctors, maybe 30, 40 years ago would advise, bed rest. And actually, when you look at all the studies that are coming out now, it was the wisest thing to advise in, many of the situations we're talking about, colds, flus or whatever. But I find people who, so many of my clients are people who are what they call A-type personalities. You come across, I was. So perfectionists, sort of really want to achieve a lot in their life, try to please all people at all times. And that is really quite a big ingredient in that whole recipe of working through illness, working through stress, and what happens is the body just shuts down, goes into hibernation, and that's when people really start experiencing that exhaustion that happens day in, day out, morning, night, afternoon, whole way through.
I mean, that's absolutely what I experienced. My background is holistic therapy, so I used to do massage, and what I was finding is a lot of my clients that came to me had chronic health conditions, like ME, fibromyalgia, and upon exploration, it was that personality type that pushed through. The trauma was there, all of these things, and that's sort of one of my first sort of steps into like trauma-informed work with like the body, and how all of these different things come in, and it does. The more I'm doing the podcast, the more I'm talking to the therapists from the different modalities, we've all got this underpinning thoughts, hypothesis, stuff that fills our practice and the way that we work, and it's all the same stuff. It is like, you need to listen to your body, you need to be a little bit kinder to yourself, you need to look at the nutrition, you need to rest when you need to rest, and like it's actually really, isn't it, what we could be doing as human beings, just to be optimal human beings, and a little bit less of this stress and the environments that we've been through. And I recognize that for many people that sounds impossible because life is busy. Now, one of the things that I suggest is meditation. If you're too busy to meditate, then you need to meditate. What would be one of your kind of, that you throw out there that we all could be doing?
I I use something, because with all the clients I've spoken to, one thing I find is when you get to that point where you are experiencing exhaustion, the joy has gone out of your life, because you're working, you're looking after children, all of the responsibilities take priority. So I do something I call a joy prescription. So it's 2 times 10 minutes a day. So 2 activities that you experience joy. And most people I speak to, they're like, oh, I don't know what gives me joy, because it's been so long that they've connected with what gives them joy. So I ask them, what did you enjoy as a kid? So whether it's climbing a tree, you know, in nature, drawing, reading a book. And most people should be able to find 20 minutes split across the day at some point. And I find that when people start connecting to that, and they're like, hang on, I did that for 7 days and I'm already feeling better and I feel happier. And then they're like, hang on a minute, I've realized my whole life is devoid of joy. It's all responsibility and work and all the rest of it. And actually I find it's quite a big trigger then to get people to think, what do I need to change in order to enable health, happiness and joy?
Yeah, and it's such a big thing, isn't it? We get so caught up in the adulting of life that we kind of forget fun isn't just for children. Play isn't just for children, and play can be, as adults, we've got even more options for play. There's lots of things that we can do. And I love that. I love that you prescribe joy. That's what a beautiful tool to give to your clients. I love it.
I know for me, in my own personal health journey, particularly when you're experiencing real difficulties with energy and you know you've got housework stacking up, bills, admin, you know, your whole life starts falling apart. And I definitely experienced that. That using energy when you've got such limited energy to do something that just gives you joy feels completely wrong when you're in that situation. And I actually, someone suggested to a chronic fatigue nurse, when I was going into a chronic fatigue clinic regularly, she's like, well, what do you do for joy? And I was like, well, I haven't got energy for that. Are you crazy? And I found it's just such a powerful tool. And once you start connecting with joy, stuff housework. Housework can wait. Just don't invite people around and then they won't see the house. You know, there's lots of things that, they need to be done. But actually, I think the joy is the priority. Because if you
completely agree.
Yeah. If you don't have that connection to happiness or something that gives you happiness, then you lack purpose in life, and then it's all just work.
But how I imagine that for some people that's really difficult to do, because like you say, it's people pleasers, it's potentially no boundaries, doing everything for everybody else, doing all the things that we feel that we should be doing with our time. So then being told find some joy, it's like, because you've got to find space for that, haven't you?
Putting yourself first, which is alien to a lot of A-type people.
Absolutely. And that for me is the big thing, is that self-care. It's prioritizing your self-care, because as we know, if you go on an airplane, you put your own oxygen mask on first. You can't fill someone else's cup if yours is empty. It's just impossible. So I think like being able to connect in with that because a professional has told you feels a little bit easier, perhaps.
Definitely. Well, exactly. It's you're almost given permission, and that's certainly what I experienced. It's like, hang on, I've been given permission to, you know, take some time to do something I enjoy, or use my limited energy for something I enjoy. It feels, and it doesn't have to be all, you know, days and days of joy. I literally say 2 10-minute slots of joy. And I think having that permission when you're an A-type is really, I think it can be a big trigger. To sort of change your mindset.
Because it's become okay, hasn't it? Rather than something that you're prioritizing over all of the other things that you've spent your entire life believing are important. It opens up that possibility that there's other things out there that are important. And you can prioritize above housework. I mean, let's be fair, most people don't care. If they care and they come to your house and it's a little bit untidy, it's not really the end of the world, is it? None of us want
No,
to live in complete chaos and disorder, but if the
no.
choice is between spending 10 minutes cleaning a house and spending 10 minutes doing something that's going to fulfill your soul and
Yeah,
give you more energy on a even if it's not on a physical level, it's that energy, that spiritually, soulfully energy, or
yeah.
makes perfect sense to me. Perfect sense to me. So I'm thinking, we were going to talk a little bit more about nutrition. So where else would you bring the nutrition in? How else do you bring the nutrition in to the sort of the combating the exhaustion?
Well, like I said, I always look at gut health, and I find a lot of people have very imbalanced gut flora. So I do a lot of work on that, and usually because of various lifestyle factors, they've got what they call a permeable intestinal lining, or what you may have heard it as leaky gut. So most people I see are actually experiencing a lot of food sensitivities, which really rob you of your energy.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work on gut health. So we balance the bacteria levels out, and we use, and it varies wildly what foods or diet I would recommend depending on what they're showing up in test results and symptoms. But yeah, I would say just anyone sort of listening to this, work out what foods you're sensitive to, because they can really rob you of your energy. Like, I'll have people who just one food will just make them want to sleep instantly from having it. And yes, you need to work on the underlying reasons as to why they're reacting to those foods. But just being able to avoid those foods might give them enough energy to then deal with those root causes of why the gut is allowing food through.
Yeah. So when you talk about sort of people having gut health issues, how would somebody know that they're having a gut health issue?
Well, most people would have either diarrhea, constipation, belching, bloating. Most people think bloating is normal now. It isn't part of a healthy gut to be bloated for hours after a meal. You expect, you feel full after a meal, but not the sort of level of bloating most people get. But you do also get, so when I find people come to me at the sort of the diagnosis of fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue stage, they've often had a long history of gut issues, but they're not necessarily experiencing gut issues there and then. So normally by that point, it's moved into what I call the systemic symptoms. So pain, joint pain, tiredness, brain fog, all of those things. So that's what, so for example, I had, similar to you, IBS, terrible IBS for years, most of my life, I think.
Yeah. And
then it seemed like I'd completely sorted my gut issues, absolutely no gut issues at all, totally fine. And on testing, my gut was in a terrible state, but it had gone silent, and it turned into this chronic fatigue picture of energy issues, pain, just all of that exhaustion picture. So that's why I take a detailed history, because that can really give me a clue. And most people get used to whatever gut issues they've got. So they're like, oh, well, yeah, but that's normal for me.
Exactly. And that's why I asked the question, because I know that is something I would have thought before, because I had the IBS for so long, and it was just, oh, well, if I'm feeling a bit stressed out and I eat this food, then it's a trigger, and the rest of the time I'm fine. As long as I don't eat that food, I'll be okay. And then that food became 5 foods, became 10 foods, became, like you say, systemic allergic reaction, and tests for Crohn's and celiacs and all of these different things that none of them, it was none of those things. But it's, our NHS works slightly differently to complementary therapists, nutritionists. We all look at different parts of the puzzle, don't we? So if you've got these little bits of information and you can bring it all together, I think it just helps to have a bigger picture and be able to connect in with people like yourself and say, yeah, I'm noticing this is happening. What can you help with? What can you help with? And it makes such a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I get a lot of clients with autoimmune diagnoses. And again, they're often clients that think, oh, well, it's not connected to my gut. It's just a disease. But autoimmune is, you get an autoimmune diagnosis, you look straight at the gut, because it's due to food sensitivities over many, many years that have then activated the immune system.
And there's even more awareness now that depression and anxiety are linked to gut health. So it really, I think it really is, like you say, it's a systemic thing that with, I guess, that's in some cases can be quite minor tweaks to lifestyle can make a massive, massive difference.
Yeah, it varies wildly. Some people, it can literally be something as simple as putting apple cider vinegar in, you know, like a drink with apple cider vinegar in.
Yeah.
And then what I thought would be months and months of gut work is like, wow, that seems to be sorted. And then for other people, it can take a bit longer. I generally find if it's the length of time it's been going on, is a bit of an indication of how long you'll have to work on it to sort it out. So if you've had gut issues for decades and decades, it's going to be likely you'll need to spend, you know, a bit more time dealing with it. If your gut issues have only just come on in the last few months or last even couple of years, it's going to be much quicker to sort. That's a general rule, I find.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with all things, really, isn't it? If it's been something that you've been dealing with for a long time, it takes a while to unlearn the habits, heal what needs healing, and then get to optimum health. So I guess the key is when you start noticing there's an issue, tap in with somebody that's got that expertise and can help you. I mean, Google's amazing now. There's so many things out there that we can look at, and there's so much information out there, but equally there's so much conflicting information. So I think it's you can educate yourself to a point, but then tapping in with a professional, I think, is really helpful as well, because even if it's not weeks and weeks of work together, being able to get that foundation in and be directed into different areas is really, really useful.
Definitely, yeah. And Google is fantastic. I think I find, because people I generally see have quite a number of diagnoses, and I experienced this myself. I ended up developing health anxiety because it's like, how many more diagnoses will I get? What's wrong? You know, and so there's a lot of searching on Google which can feed into that, if that makes sense. So that's one sort of concern I have with that. It's useful, but
just it's being mindful, isn't it? If it becomes something that is then impacting your mental health as well and giving you that anxiety, definitely tap in with somebody who can be like, okay, let's get a plan together, because it does get overwhelming when you've given a diagnosis and you've got all your symptoms, and especially when your symptoms don't all fit exactly what you're being told is wrong with you. It can become, is there more? And for some people it is more, and for some people that's even scarier, because then you're only with Google, you're not actually going back to see a doctor. But I know with my experience, I understand why people don't necessarily go to a doctor. So it's finding that support wherever you can, that, you know, somebody that knows what they're talking about and can direct you and guide you. I think that's really important. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing the podcast and bringing all professionals like yourself on, so that you can actually go, hey, I'm here, and this is the stuff that I can help you with. You're not alone. Let's work together and sort of get you on the path to wellness, because there's far too many of us, I think, out there living this life of chronic health, stress, and kind of not living in our joy, and not realizing that actually a few little tweaks to our way of being, our daily lives, can make such a massive difference.
Definitely. And I think that's really key. And there's having lived a half-life for so long, if that makes sense, or no life being better.
Absolutely makes sense.
Lived a full life. I don't think nobody in the world deserves to live that half-life, or being bedbound or housebound, or that daily struggle. It's just, for me it was abhorrent. And that's why.
And I think that's it. But there's hope, isn't there? There is hope, because you know, you're living your life, I'm living my life, even if it doesn't look the same as it did before, which is a good thing, a life that brings us joy.
Definitely. And then you can create a life as well that helps promote your health rather than detract from it, which, you know, it's a snowball effect, just like having a life that didn't help your health. If you create a life that it, that's a snowball effect, and you'll just eventually, you know, I find people just get better and better, more and more vibrant and more vital.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm noticing the time. It feels like that's a good kind of point to bring it to a close. Is there anything that you'd like to leave people listening with?
One thing I come across a lot, I would say a lot of people so wrapped up in, you know, modern life and all of their pressures, and certainly from what I experienced, is that actually if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. You can't work, you can't interact with family, you can't do all of those things. So prioritize your health before it gets to the point where you're forced to prioritize it. That's what I would say, just because it's easier to sort before any issues come up, or if you've noticed a few little warning signs, than it is when, you know, you're passed from doctor to doctor to doctor, you're not getting any results, and you're not able to work. I wish I had prioritized my health. I wish I'd paid attention to it before I had, you know, years and years and years of severely ill health.
Yeah. And I would absolutely echo that. You don't win medals by pushing through.
Yeah.
Your body can only deal with so much, and when it is telling you that it needs to rest, listen to it, because no one else is going to care about your body as much as you can. So do listen. It tells you things that you need to know every day, so listen to what it says and act accordingly. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking with me. It's given me lots to think about, actually. It's given me a lot to think about. So I hope that the people that listened get a lot to think about as well. And I hope that listening, you have enjoyed today's episode. So to connect and find out more about me and my guests, visit srtt.co.uk or follow SRTT Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. I'll be back next Wednesday with a new guest. Until then, stay curious and be kind to yourself.